The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Maxine Waters, Congresswoman, she was out in L.A. having a press conference or like a rally. There she is with the microphone and pushing for the public to harass the administration or people who work in the administration. Listen.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet. No peace, no sleep. And guess what? We're going to win this battle. God is on our side. On the side of the children, on the side of what's right. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
We prioritize the feelings of white supremacists, racist, and fascist over the rights, or we juxtapose it at a minimum. We as America, we juxtapose like side by side. We put it equal to the rights of the people who are victims of white supremacy. Right now, all over the country, conservatives, and I'm talking, I want to talk about this in two different veins. Of course, conservatives are going to act like this. Of course, conservatives are going to act like what Maxine Waters said yesterday is the worst thing that's happening today. And the worst thing that's happening during this entire period. Like she's calling for a war. Maxine Waters is calling for a revolution. You know, all this kind of stuff, you know, all the articles and the think pieces from the right. This is exactly what they're supposed to do because they have mastered this political warfare game, right? Of course, it's their job to make a mountain out of a molehill. This is equivalent in terms of today's societal norms in this era of Donald Trump. This is what Maxine Waters said is the equivalent of Barack Obama's tan suit. Especially when you consider that on yesterday, the president of the United States tweeted very forcibly in favor of ending due process for people once they get to our borders. We'll discuss that in a minute. But this is literally happening on the same day. And I 100% fully expect conservatives to do what they do because this is all they know how to do. They are masters of propaganda. They are masters of pushing the Overton window so far in their direction, in their favor. Now we're at the point where we are literally hearing from the president of the United States about the end of due process for people who come to our shores. And yet the thing that is most egregious in their eyes and in the eyes of some moderates and centrists, that's who I'm really going to talk about today. They feel like the most egregious thing that happened on yesterday was Maxine Waters' speech about not giving this administration any peace. And that's why I started by saying that they clearly equate the rights of people who are victims of white supremacy, marginalized communities. They equate our rights to the comfort of white supremacists and fascists. They put more, and I'm not even the they in this part. I'm not talking about conservatives because, like I said, this is what they do. I'm talking about people who ostensibly call themselves the resistance, people who seem to be opposed, or at least on the paper, they're opposed to Donald Trump's policies. But we draw the line at incivility. We draw the line at being rude. You know, how dare the Red Hen House, whatever the name of the restaurant, decided not to serve Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That's also what happened this weekend. In case you've been living under a rock, there was a manager who polled her employees. Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her party came to eat there, and the manager decided to ask her employees, who were made up of a whole swath of America, right? They were gay, they were straight, they were black, they were white, they were immigrants in her pool of employees. And so she gave them a choice. She said, if you want, let's be democratic about this. The manager of the restaurant who put Sarah Huckabee Sanders out, they voted, and Huckabee Sanders lost. And the manager quietly went over and asked, let her know that we didn't want to let Huckabee know that they did not want to serve her and her party. And that, oh my goodness, that was, you would think that that was the end of, that was the first salvo in the new Civil War. Of course, you would expect that from conservatives, but the people who are the most dangerous in this equation aren't conservatives because we know them, we know their MO, we know how they operate, we know that they are masters of propaganda, masters of lies, masters of creating the conditions where they can literally kidnap children from their parents and we can't even refuse to serve them. That's what they are masters of. I'm talking about these milquetoast, mealy-mouthed, recklessly civil centrists, people who all they really want is to go back to the nice, happy decorum of the pre-Trump era. But I hate to inform you, the Rubicon has been crossed. There is no going back to a world pre-Trump. There is no going back to the civility of the Obama administration, under which all of the conditions that allow Trump to number one, win, all the conditions that allow Trump to do what he does were there. All the conditions were there. In this wonderfully civil world where you could go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and you could dress for the nerd prom is what they call it. And everything just seemed to be fine because it was a nice, comfortable, familiar Washington, D.C. experience where no one would ever get refused service. I mean, of course, you're not going to get refused service because of your race, religion, sexual orientation, but even the bigots could get service. I mean, Steve Scalise and Peter King and all, they could all go and, have bourbons, after they just got through passing legislation to hurt people. And this is the world that these people in the center really want to get back to, where at least we are civilized. We may disagree on the humanity of marginalized communities, but at least we're civilized. We may disagree on how you believe that white genocide is really a thing and that white people are being discriminated against, but at least we're civilized and we can have a shot of bourbon afterwards. This is the fantasy world. Actually, let me rephrase that, because it was a real tangible world pre-Trump. And now we're in a place where that reckless civility that kept us from making actual changes for all of my life, everything has been about false equivalences. Everything has been about trying to appear fair and balanced and creating false equivalencies where you equate the bigotry of people on the right, the bigotry that is weaponized and that is supported by political power and supported by the full force of the federal government. You equate that to the protest of employees who say we don't want to serve bigots. That has been the reality for a long time. And now this is a season where it calls for us to 100% oppose this fascism wherever we see it and however we see it, anytime we see it. And we've got people like Jonathan Alter, the author of several books on Barack Obama, David Axelrod, former advisor to President Obama, Arnie Duncan, former Secretary of Education for President Obama, Elijah Cummings, African-American congressman. You have all these establishment players who are journalists who, I'm ostensibly cool with, so I guess I won't call their names. But we have journalists who are like, draw the line. I mean, how? I can't believe that this restaurant wouldn't feed this woman. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the mouthpiece of this administration, an administration that is ripping children away from parents, and an administration that is devastating communities across this country, an administration that is trying to destroy the LGBTQ community, an administration that has fueled, who has encouraged, and has exacerbated the situation with police brutality in black communities. A president who has said from his own mouth during his presidency that the police should be even more rough with our communities. A president who is vilifying people of the Muslim faith every single day. A president who uses white supremacy as his number one tool of ascent to the White House. That is his number one trait. His pandering and peddling of white supremacy. Pandering to and peddling of. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the face, the mouthpiece of that. These people do not deserve to be comfortable in our public square, and anyone who is saying that, you are complicit. You are a part of the problem, because God forbid we draw the line. God forbid, in the midst of all of these devastating things that you the journalists have said are devastating. You have written about it. You who have tweeted about it. You see what this administration is doing, but you draw the line at feeding these monsters? Oh God, at the end of the day, we should be able to sit down and have scotch and discuss why you think my life is less valuable. Why they dehumanize us. Why they forward racial IQ science. These are the people that you want to sit down and have a drink with. You are as much an enemy as they are. Matter of fact, you're more dangerous because you want us to believe that you are an ally with us when you could sit comfortably with people who would just as soon destroy us. The President of the United States is pushing the envelope so far and so hard and so fast that it is breathtaking. On yesterday, the president tweeted the following quote: "We cannot allow all of these people to invade our country. When somebody comes in, we must immediately, with no judges or court cases, bring them back from where they came. Our system is a mockery to good immigration policy and law and order. Most children come without parents." Saying that when a person comes to our shores, that they should not be afforded due process. This is literally the executive branch, the president of the United States, saying that we should just simply do away with due process. Here's the fascinating thing about this is that people who otherwise, can you imagine? I do have to speak about the hypocrisy, even though there's very little utility in it. But can you imagine if Barack Obama called for the end of due process for anyone? Even if he had called for the end of due process for immigrants, Republicans would then become pro-immigrant. And they would have impeached the president on that alone. But that's futile. That's a futile exercise because we know that they are the masters of hypocrisy. But I'm amazed that, and actually I'm going to pause because I want to go check some people's timelines real quick, and I want to see what they said about this tweet. I'll be right back. So no, I'm not shocked at what I didn't see. You do this for yourself. Go and look at yesterday and see who at yesterday's timelines, right? And see who didn't say anything about this tweet from Donald Trump. Not from conservatives, but from people who may, consider themselves to be libertarian or free speech advocates or free speech absolutists. And you probably won't be any more surprised than I was. Or rather, any less surprised than I was. That's actually the phrase I want to say. But this is a clear constitutional violation. Once a person touches our shores, this is it. It is what it is. And once they touch our shores, they are afforded constitutional rights. They're not afforded the right to everything that American citizens have, but they are afforded constitutional protections, including due process. And so for the president of the United States, the most egregious thing that happened in a long time, the elephant in the room, the thing that everyone should be concerned about, people aren't even talking about in a significant fashion. Everyone's talking about whether or not Sarah Huckabee Sanders got fed, or whether or not Maxine Waters went too far. But here is the president of the United States saying that we can do away with due process. Forget about judges. Forget about trials. Just send them right back. I mean, come on. Can we not see how, what I said at the beginning of the show, how people will equate actual violence done from the comfort of the White House in a suit and tie with all of the proper decorum, which Donald Trump himself doesn't even have, but at least he puts on a tie, right? And they will equate the damage and the violence committed by this administration and any administration with the rights of marginalized people. So it is more important for them that we don't don't make them uncomfortable by refusing to serve them, and yet they're silent. Not conservatives, because I expect this from them, but people who believe themselves to be advocates for civil liberties, they're silent about the most egregious example of the government, not just the executive branch, but out of the government combined. This is the most egregious example of violating civil liberties. And yet, here we are talking about whether or not we should serve these bastards lunch. And here we are equating serving them lunch, serving white supremacists lunch, serving people who are actually harming people, destroying the lives of people, of children. We're worried about serving them lunch and whether or not we're being bigoted by turning away fascists from our restaurants. Anthony King on Twitter, just some guy, I don't know, a fake avatar. So this is what he said. He said it so poignantly. He said, it's encouraging that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was judged not by the color of her skin, but by the content of her character. And that's precisely correct. And so while the president of the United States is violating the Constitution, I mean, quite literally using the full force of the government to, really change what it means not only to be American, but what it means to have due process in America. And people are concerned about Sarah Huckabee Sanders getting, a chicken wing and a biscuit. This brings us full circle to conversations that I had last week. I had people jump into my mentions on Twitter about, trying to correct me. The President of the United States isn't calling for the end of due process, Ben. He's calling for the end of due process for illegal immigrants. And I'm like, of course, I do expect to hear that from conservatives, and I expect to hear that particularly from white conservatives. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, black people who actually said that. And I'm taking my time with this, just, whatever. And they actually are underscoring and justifying policies and actions taken by this administration that will undoubtedly be used to harm black people, people of color in general, marginalized communities in general. You cannot sit back and think that the tactics, the motivation, and the outcomes of the actions of this administration will be limited to harming just immigrants and no one else. You would be a fool to actually believe that, especially because they are drawing from the same playbook that they've been using to vilify black people since slavery. They're using the same exact playbook. It's just updated for social media. They are vilifying immigrants. They are scapegoating immigrants. They are creating a problem that doesn't really exist in terms of the violence of immigrants. They are the beneficiaries of the actual problem, which is that they are benefiting from the low wages that they can pay these immigrants. I mean, and you are supporting this? Using the language of white supremacy, no less. I actually have to read one in particular that really caught me off guard, because someone shared on my social media timeline on Facebook. They actually shared a comment that is a talking point directly from Nazis. A guy on Facebook said this. He said, the only reason this is an issue for Democrats is because the Hispanic immigrants are future voters. Hispanics outnumber us. And if talking about black people, and if immigration is allowed to go unchecked, welcome to a new phase of being a second-class citizen in America. I mean, that is literally a white supremacist talking point. That is both, I mean, not only, besides it being a white supremacist talking point, it is fallacious and it is wrong. I mean, and not to mention the fact that Hispanic, you can have actual black people who are Hispanic. I mean, people of African descent who are Hispanic, but never mind. That's an entirely different conversation. I'll send you some links to help you educate you on that. But I think this is how the logic goes. Whatever the majority population is, they are going to be the oppressor. That's got to be the most simplistic. That has to be the most simplistic way to view and try to understand this line of reasoning that is promulgated the most by white supremacists and white nationalists. The 14 words, right? Quite literally a Nazi talking point, but it's also the most simplistic lens through which we can understand black people who oppose immigration or not. I mean, and it's one thing to oppose immigration or to want a more rigorous process for immigration, or it's another thing to if someone else is like calling for the end of borders altogether. That's a argument to be had. Where is the threshold? What is the policy? What does it actually look like? But to do so on this fear of, oh my goodness, America is about to be run by Hispanics. I mean, you cannot do that without underscoring and echoing. And no. Even more important than those two things. You cannot do so without empowering the exact system that is oppressing your people right now. And there's so many facets to this that maybe I should just do an entire series of episodes, or at least a single episode on this fear that simply because a population is now in the majority, that they are by default going to become the oppressors, particularly in this constitutional democracy, this democracy that's guided by our Constitution, which many are now turning a blind eye to the violations of said Constitution, that Constitution that would protect us from this new majority that you fear so much. We would be protected by this Constitution, but you're silent, allowing Donald Trump to violate the Constitution for fear of the people that you don't want to become the new majority. See how this works? You see how fear and hatred actually comes back to undermine you and support the very system that is destroying you. So simultaneously, you are creating the conditions by allowing Donald Trump to weaken the Constitution unchallenged, at least unchallenged by your voice. You're co-signing this. Weakening the Constitution that would protect you from whatever race became the majority. And I have to take another tangent. Why is it that people look at a race and think that they're all monolithic? The only reason the black vote is a voting block, we're not even monolithic, but we are a voting block. We are only a voting block in reaction to the virulent racism of the Republican Party. Do you know how many black people would be Republican if Republicans weren't racist? I mean, black people are okay with homophobia. I mean, look at the numbers. Black people are okay with opposing abortion. Look at the numbers. We are extremely conservative, but we can't find a home outside of the Democratic Party because the Republican Party is so damn racist. Like, we're not even dealing with dog whistles anymore. But the only reason I bring that up is because I bring that up because black people, while we may vote as a voting bloc right now, we are not monolithic. We disagree with each other just as much as any race. Likewise, there is no such thing as a monolithic immigrant voice. So it's not, and what does this have to do with anything? It's not as though immigrants are going to come to the United States and all agree on the same thing. First of all, they're not even coming from the same place, the same nations, the same country, the same ethnicity, the same language. And so this fear, this unfounded fear, which I shouldn't even have to explain why your fear is so illogical, but I am taking the time to help you through your pseudo wokeness. I'm here to help you, right? I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to help you. It's illogical because they will be just as divided as the rest of us. There will be conservative immigrants. There will be liberal immigrants. There are going to be immigrants who love the black community. There's going to be immigrants who hate the black community. There's black people who love the black community, and there's black people who hate the black community. So your fear is illogical for so many reasons, and I shouldn't take the time to explain this to you, but I will take the time to explain this to you. But it should just make sense to you that supporting this power structure and allowing this power structure to violate the only thing that is protecting us, the Constitution, because of some unfounded fear of immigrants, has to be the most illogical and self-destructive version of wokeness that I have ever seen in my entire life. And goodness, seeing that this is my only platform right now, I have to talk to a mixed audience, and things that I'm getting ready to say, I don't want white folks just fall back. Don't comment on this. There is a vein there's a train of thought in the black community that I don't want in power any more than I want white supremacy in power. This is that. There is no such thing as a black community any more than there's any other community. We are all divided down what we believe, differences in our belief, religiously, politically, otherwise. There's a vein in the black community that should not any more be in power than white supremacists. Period. That group of black people who feel like they own the patent on blackness, as though they have some preeminent claim to what it is to be a brother. That group who likes to use the language of blackness as a means of attacking people who don't agree with them philosophically. People who don't agree with you politically. You want to use the claim of blackness, and this actually can transcend any community, but I'm talking about us right now. We disagree philosophically. We disagree at the core of how we view the world. We disagree on so many things that it doesn't matter if your skin could be purple. Your skin could be green. We are so far apart on what we believe that this unity because of our skin color is absolutely erroneous. Everyone who's skin to me ain't kin to me. I don't believe. No, you don't get my support just because you're black. I disagree with your entire way of thinking, brother. And all this, and it is exposed best here in this situation because some of these people fundamentally believe that we must oppose anyone who's not black for fear that they may become the majority and we will become second class citizens. Well, first of all, we're already second class citizens. And to empower that power structure, white men who are using immigrants as scapegoats so that they can continue to gain political power and to continue to use that political power to exploit economic power. That is the system that you are supporting when you use white supremacist talking points to oppose immigration. That is what you are empowering. And you're doing so in the name of wokeness and in the name of being, really the true black person. No, it is a level of ignorance that undermines the progress of black people and marginalized people. Like Fannie Lou Hamer said, we're not free until we're all free. Nobody's free until everybody's free. And to see black people supporting this white supremacist attempt to undermine the Constitution, the only thing that protects us from the tyranny of the majority, to see us doing that and doing it in the name of blackness, it's like you are literally handing the tools of your demise over to your oppressors. No, not everyone is my ally. I fight more. I've just asked the left how I fight with them. I mean, I've got the receipts. I fight with people who I think I'm most closely aligned with politically harder than I fight with some of you. So no, not everyone is my ally. But just because you have my skin color doesn't mean you're my ally either. But that's not the point. That's besides the point. Here's what I'm trying to say. I would rather stand, I not only rather, but I absolutely will stand side by side with communities that have been marginalized to fight against this white male Christian supremacist society and to fight for all of our liberation from this society through which every single one of us have been brutalized. And I will never give this system the tools that it needs to maintain its stranglehold on all of us. And anytime you empower this power structure, this white male Christian supremacy that devastates so many communities, anytime you empower it because of your fear of another race, you become complicit with the demise of your own.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.